a hearty welcome to one and all. This is episode 134 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for joining me on this. Stop me if you've heard this before. Very rainy day in New York. But if you're catching this episode on the YouTube channel or enjoying the content, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, and turn on those notifications. Or if you catch up with this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. So this episode will be the 11th, hard to believe, the 11th entry in our continuing series, which I've gotten a lot of good feedback on. I appreciate it. The best movie you've never seen. And this is a film that, even if you're a big movie fan, if you're under 35, you probably haven't seen it because the film is almost 3 decades old. Unless you're a Johnny Depp or Tim Burton completist, then you probably have seen it. But my guess is that most of you have not seen Tim Burton's fantastic 1994 period dramatic comedy or comedy drama, Ed Wood, featuring easily a top 5 best Johnny Depp performance. Ed Wood was a real person. He's generally regarded as the worst filmmaker to ever have a Hollywood career, an above board Hollywood career where he worked with people who had careers, and he was able to get reasonable levels of financing for his awful movies. It's really amazing that this guy was able to work. But the real Edward D. Wood Jr. Served his country in World War II, and he lived a more or less normal life in many respects. He liked to dress up in women's clothing. Despite that, he was a theater director, he worked in theater, and he had a movie career. And as this film, Ed Wood, opens, Tim Burton's movie, he is in the phase of his career where he was directing theater. And you have Sarah Jessica Parker in a great supporting role, and Bill Murray and Jeffrey Jones and terrific actors in supporting roles in this movie. And we get to, the movie has all of these different kinds of people and does not laugh at them. It resists the urge to make fun of those who are different. I mean, I guess from that perspective, this movie was ahead of its time, but it presents this motley cast of characters, and the real life Ed Wood had kind of a stock crew and people that he worked with throughout his career. Sometimes people just get lucky, whether or not they deserve to get lucky. And the biggest stroke of luck that Ed Wood encountered was meeting the real Bela Lugosi, the iconic horror film star of classic Universal horror movies such as the original 1931 Dracula, directed by Todd Browning, and The Black Cat, directed by Edgar Ulmer, with his frenemy, Boris Karloff, who, as I mentioned, Boris loved Bela, Bela hated Boris. He was jealous. But Bela Lugosi was still a name around the time that he met Ed Wood. And as such, Ed was able to get projects funded simply by selling potential investors on, hey, I've got Bela Lugosi. And this movie does more with the friendship between the two of them than you expect. And Martin Landau, great old actor who was in Rounders, he plays Professor Petrovsky, who almost literally is the only reason he gives the lifeline that Matt Damon needs, or Matt Damon's character is just fucked. He's fucked. And Landau is very strong in that film. It seems early that it's going to be a throwaway part, but there's a wonderful scene in the final act of the movie where Damon, who is in deep shit, takes a moment, has a drink with his professor, he's a law student, and Landau tells a story about his younger life And it's so leveling and almost it hurts because this is a character in that movie who has achieved enormous success. Most people will not get anywhere near what he was able to do. To be a tenured law professor at what's supposed to be the best law school in New York City. And yet he was a disappointment to his family. He was all but excommunicated by his family because he didn't follow the path that they wanted him to. Martin Landau in the movie Ed Wood ended up winning the Best Supporting Actor Oscar. Now, there were people who would say it's a lifetime achievement award. This is a guy who was best friends with James Dean, 40 years before that. Landau's performance in Ed Wood is exemplary. He doesn't look anything like Bela Lugosi. He doesn't sound anything like Bela Lugosi, but he captures the spirit and gives us the best glimpse of what Lugosi's life probably was like as he unfortunately was nearing the end. His health just was not good. But the movie takes you places you don't expect with this bizarre but lovable cast of characters that we meet throughout the course of the story, many of whom become Johnny Depp as Ed Wood, his friends, his co-workers, his confidants. The film plays very straight with everybody, and it's in black and white, and the cinematography is amazing. It's so crisp and so clear. It's such beautiful shot making by Tim Burton. And Burton, in a way, was caught between the fact that he clearly adored Edward D. Wood Jr., but at the same time, he knew the guy was put out movies that were just awful. And not deliberately so. He thought that he was making masterpieces. Bride of the Atom. And his iconic, legendary, well, he had two, Glenn or Glenda, and his magnum opus, Plan 9 from Outer Space. We meet this group of people, and we follow Ed Wood, Johnny Depp as Ed Wood, through these various kind of madcap adventures as he in some ways struggles to get financing, struggles to get people to watch his film that he has already finished, struggles to get distribution, and you feel for him. Yes, we know he sucks, but Depp imbues him with such a sense of whimsy. And yeah, he's kind of goofy, but the movie takes him seriously and we take him seriously because he's trying to create great art. This is not somebody whose goal is to make shit and hope that people come to see it. He's trying to produce great cinema. He just doesn't have the backing, the wherewithal. In many cases, he doesn't have the cast anyway. But I don't really think the issue was the cast. He was working from stories that he had come up with, which were just awful, and ideas that could never have worked, and he didn't have enough time, and he didn't have the budget to pull off a lot of even practical effects. He did not have enough financing. So it's like, nowadays you can shoot on the cheap. It's a lot easier because you could do digital effects on your phone. But in the 1950s, you couldn't really do that. So there's an incredible scene where Bela Lugosi, as I guess he's supposed to be a scientist, I think this was the movie called Bride of the Atom. He's supposed to fight a giant octopus. It's a giant octopus. But they had something that looked like an octopus. It didn't work. It was just like a big inflatable, I don't even know what. So Bela Lugosi, who had been in high-class Universal horror productions and other films that had, for the time, significant budgets, he's waiting for someone to switch this octopus on. And he's like, well, what are we doing here? And Johnny Depp says, oh, no, Bela, I forgot what word he uses, but he pretty much tells him, you're just going to have to fight an inanimate, inflatable object there and pretend it's an octopus. So he's screaming and thrashing, and it's hilarious. This is real film acting. He's pretending to fight a giant octopus, which is neither giant nor an octopus. It doesn't even look right from the inflatable, whatever the fuck it is, perspective. It's all wrong. And Depp, only in one scene does he lose faith in what he's trying to do, because the cast isn't giving him what he thinks he needs, and the crew, and he starts to have problems, and he despairs. And he meets what's supposed to be Orson Welles. Now, I don't know if the real Ed Wood actually met the real Orson Welles, but the scene between Ed Wood and Orson Welles, Johnny Depp, and it's actually Vincent D'Onofrio. God, the fact that I didn't know that immediately. Vincent D'Onofrio, who is a phenomenal actor. You see him now playing, the Kingpin in some of the MCU like series Echo, and everybody remembers him from Full Metal Jacket as Private Pyle. He's a great actor, and he looks like Orson Welles the way they do his hair and his kind of bearing in this movie. He also got Welles' very unique speech patterns and cadence down. And the incredible part about this scene is that Orson Welles doesn't know who Ed Wood is. At least I don't think in the world of the movie he's familiar with his work. But the scene between these two guys, Orson Welles talks to Ed Wood as if he is an equal when he finds out, he's also a filmmaker. And Orson Welles throws little crumbs out for the film geeks like myself, where he says, they're making me cast Charlton Heston as a Mexican in my new movie. The movie he's talking about, of course, is Touch of Evil, where Orson was still pretty young at the time, was playing a character who was way older than he actually was. I think Orson was probably maybe 43 or 44, but he was playing a character who was in his 60s, and the makeup in that movie, Touch of Evil, wow. He doesn't look like a guy in his 40s. And it doesn't even look like he's wearing that much makeup, but that's beside the point. The scene between Ed Wood, Johnny Depp's Ed Wood, and Vincent D'Onofrio's Orson Welles galvanizes Ed Wood. I'm going to go back and I'm going to finish my fucking movie. He doesn't say that, but that's the implication. And the film has these strange interludes where people are acting out scenes in the movie within the movie, that took place in the diegetic present of the movie. So, for example, Ed Wood likes to dress up in women's clothing. Sarah Jessica Parker as his, I think it was Dolores Fuller, I think it was his girlfriend at the time. But when she finds out that he really wants to wear her cashmere sweater, she lets him wear it. And in the movie that he's making, Glenn or Glenda, title is not an accident, it's literally the exact same thing that they did in real life. And so here we are, a viewer watching a movie. We watch a scene in a movie, and then we watch the same scene in a movie within a movie. It's a pretty crazy experience as a viewer. Not to compare any of this to Rear Window, but in Rear Window, as a viewer, we're watching a movie, and James Stewart's character, who can't really move around very much because he has a busted leg, he's watching his neighbors, so doesn't have anything better to do, and it's almost like he's watching a movie. Unfortunately, in the world of that film, the crazy shit that he sees might come back to bite him in the proverbial ass and cost him and his lady friend, the magnificent Grace Kelly, their lives. In the world of Ed Wood, the stakes aren't as high as that. We're just talking about a guy who is trying to make a movie, and a great movie, and he can't because he doesn't have the talent. He doesn't have anything. But something that wouldn't happen now, that happened in real life, and they work it into this film. Ed Wood was able to get financing for his magnum opus, his most famous film, the worst movie, maybe the worst movie in the history of Hollywood, Plan 9 from Outer Space. He got funding because of his friendship with Bela Lugosi, and yeah, Bela's going to make the movie. Okay, well, here's a little money, go off, good luck, and we'll see the film when you're done. Bela Lugosi passed after only a couple of days of filming, and this is in real life, and also we get this in the movie. So Plan 9 from Outer Space, I guess the original title, the great title, Grave Robbers from Outer Space. It's like the title even tells you how schlocky it is and how absurd. Plan 9 at least is, I guess, it's a better title. But Bela passed away. Yeah, unfortunately, he was a heroin addict and his health was bad. From the time we meet him in the story, he's struggling health-wise, trying to get clean. His wife has left him. It's sad. In the context of a movie which has a lot of bright and funny moments and characters that are full of life and vibrant and colorful, literally, even though the film is in black and white. The tragic element is Bela Lugosi in the film and his story, and the fact that this once proud and huge star had fallen on such hard times, while his contemporary, Boris Karloff, continued to do great work and be very highly well-respected in the industry, making good money and all of that. Rather than scrap the film, and we've seen people in Hollywood more recently do this where, heaven forbid, somebody passes and you don't know what to do. River Phoenix famously died during the making of, what's it called, Dark Blood. There was a movie he was shooting when he passed. They weren't able to finish it, or maybe it was just that they were always going to abandon it. It happens. But in this case, Ed Wood was so focused singularly, the real Ed Wood, and we get this in the film, on trying to get this movie made. They had just started it. He decided that, well, we'll just recast Bela, and we're just going to make the movie anyway without Bela, and we'll do the best we can. So the character that Bela played somehow, I guess, was like a Dracula character. He was a vampire, but that doesn't even make any sense because the bad guys were from outer space, and they weren't vampires. So even that, this is a movie, if you watch it, you will literally be scratching your head the whole way through because nothing makes sense. They talk in Hollywood where sometimes they shoot day for night. In this movie, it goes from day to night and back and forth without any explanation. And the special effects are just horrendous. They are horrendous. But the character that Bela was supposed to play somehow is like a vampire. So Johnny Depp is trying to figure out, what am I going to do? I have to get somebody to play Bela's part, to honor him or whatever. And he meets this guy, a chiropractor, who had worked with the Sarah Jessica Parker character in the movie. And he's convinced the guy is a dead ringer for Bela. The actor's name was Tom Mason, the real-life guy. When I tell you he did not look anything like the real Bela Lugosi, he didn't look anything like the real Bela Lugosi. He was about a foot taller. He looked nothing like him at all, like not even a tiny bit. And so in the movie, it's the same thing. This guy doesn't look anything like Bela Lugosi. Okay. So what they ended up doing, and it's out of context, it's one of the funniest moments in any movie I've ever seen, especially when you know the story I just told you. You could watch Ed Wood's movie Plan 9 from Outer Space just for this one scene. So obviously this guy could not show his face because they would realize it's not Bela Lugosi. So you have a scene, a classic horror movie scene, where there's a woman in bed. I don't know where this come from, but there's a woman in bed. And then the Dracula character, who I guess is one of the grave robbers from outer space, he comes in to menace her. And we see this guy is way taller than, this guy looks like he's about 6'4". So he has the robe, with the cloak and the cape and everything, and he has his hand over his face like this. And the woman screams, and he slowly walks towards her in a menacing way. And he just keeps his hand over his face like this. And then as the woman tries to like scramble and run away rather than just go after her. He can't do that because then we'll see that this is not really Bela Lugosi. He keeps the cloak over his head and he turns the wrong way to follow her out of the room. And I remember the first time I saw that, I was on the floor. It is fucking hilarious. In the world of the movie, he cast the chiropractor, the non-actor, in the Bela Lugosi part. And they end up making the movie. And for you wrestling fans, the guy who was George the Animal Steel in the WWE, he plays a character who was played by a real wrestler named Tor Johnson, in the 50s. They kind of look similar. And it's just all so bad. But in the world of this film, it's magic because Tim Burton was able to get great performances from everyone in the cast, including the wrestler who was George the Animal Steel. I don't remember what his actual name was. Let me see if I can find his name real life. Hold on. Let's see. No, I forgot Patricia Arquette was in the movie too. Depp was known for playing quirky, distinctive characters. Not so much What's Eating Gilbert Grape, but in movies like Benny and June, for example. And certainly as Captain Jack Sparrow in Pirates of the Caribbean. What he does, though, as Ed Wood, is craft a three-dimensional character pretty much out of thin air. Because nobody has any identification. I shouldn't say nobody. 99.9% of people who would ever watch this movie do not know who Edward D. Wood Jr. was. And they will not have any kind of idea of, well, I know exactly how this is going to go. He creates this character out of whole cloth, simply by, whatever research he did. But he makes each step in Ed Wood's journey believable. And the film, not surprisingly, builds to the premiere of what is now called Plan 9 from Outer Space. And to the last, Ed Wood is convinced he has made a masterpiece. Even as we are watching a train wreck take place, we are watching a disaster, over like 20 to 30 minutes of the movie. There's no way this is not going to be terrible. You have characters bumping into sets and not even doing more takes. Well, how do you do that? Well, he's working fast. So the movie ends with the premiere of Plan 9 from Outer Space. And it doesn't show the reaction. It simply shows Johnny Depp, happy as a clam. This is the movie that they're going to remember me for. He was right, but not for the same reason that he thought. That was the movie they remembered him for, but they remembered him for that movie, and this is one of the worst movies to ever come out of Hollywood, and this is probably the worst filmmaker who ever worked in any way, even in the tiniest way connected to the studio system. So the movie Ed Wood has never been on Netflix to my knowledge, and I've never seen it streaming free anywhere. You always have to pay a couple of bucks. I have no idea how that works or why that works, but easy for me to say, it is a movie to seek out. If you still have a DVD player, rent it from the library, but it's worth the $2 or the $3 to rent. You've definitely never seen anything like it. The cinematography, as I said, is stupendous. And it was not a hit at the box office, even though it got great reviews. The Rotten Tomatoes is sitting at 92%, which is probably the highest score of any film that Tim Burton or Johnny Depp has made. 92%. That means that more than 9 out of 10 people who saw it, critics that is, gave it the old thumbs up and says, wow, this movie is great. But it didn't do well at the box office. And as I say, Martin Landau ended up winning the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. And it was nominated for another Academy Award for Best Makeup, but it didn't win. But it is a film to seek out. as the late great film critic Roger Ebert would say, it is a film to seek out and to treasure, and to understand that despite the fact that this guy's films were terrible, he lived a life worth remembering. In his way, he was groundbreaking. He was somebody he kept his proclivities quiet for the time, but he told enough people in his circle of the things that he liked to do, and no one judged him for it. They just let him do his thing. I mean, he claimed, I think there's a scene where when Depp talks about how he was a paratrooper and he was wearing women's undergarments when he jumped out of a fucking plane. Yeah, no problem. Judgment-free zone there. Nobody's like, hey, what the fuck, you fucking weirdo. No. He tells the story and, wow, all right. The movie never preaches and doesn't beat you over the head talking about we need to accept those who are different from us. But by presenting these unusual characters in the way the film does not judge them. We can judge the fact that this guy was a shitty filmmaker, but the movie does not judge any of these people who we meet. And man, Bill Murray is really good. He's a guy who is going to go for what used to be called a sex change. They didn't call it, at least I don't think in the movie, I don't think they call it gender reassignment. The point is, his character is also presented as is, and nobody is taking shots at him or taking cracks at him. And he gives it back when, anytime somebody pokes at him. I think the scene where they're discussing theater, where they kind of was taking shots, yeah, he just has an attitude like, pfft. So it is a movie to find and to watch. Another one that gets my highest recommendation. It is very funny, even though it takes the form of a horror film because it uses horror film lighting and angles, as I say, the black and white photography or cinematography. But it is a really good movie. And I would say it's my favorite Johnny Depp performance. I love him in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, but this is my favorite Depp performance. And it's my favorite Tim Burton film. I really like Big Fish, and I'm a fan of Tim Burton's in general. I love the original Batman from '89 with Jack and Michael Keaton. Fantastic. Beetlejuice, I'm not as big a fan as I'm supposed to be. I'll take Ed Wood over Beetlejuice every day of the week and twice on Sunday. But that's neither here nor there. It's not about my opinion. It's just about, in this instance, hopefully shining a light on a movie worth your time that maybe you've just missed. And, that's what we're here for. Try to spread knowledge if I, in fact, have any knowledge to spread. I hope to think that I do. And with that, we've reached the end of episode 134 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all once again for joining me. And if you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, share, comment, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, turn on those notifications. The 11th entry in our continuing series of the best movie you've never seen, 1994's Ed Wood, directed by Tim Burton, starring Johnny Depp, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Bill Murray. Peace.